Hey everybody, welcome back to the InfoSystems podcast, Business and Technology in Tennessee. I'm Josh Davis, Marketing Director with InfoSystems, and today I've got a special guest from one of InfoSystems' business partners, Dell Technologies. With me is Neal Shade, and Neal, I'll let you kind of give a quick introduction of yourself.
Sure, thank you. My name is Neal Shade. I'm with Dell. I am a Senior Systems Engineer in the channel in the Global Compute and Networking Group. So basically my responsibility includes server, storage, networking, and most things in the data center.
That sounds like a pretty broad job role.
It is, but we concentrate in mostly the storage, servers, and networking.
Yeah, right on. Well, that's great. So Neal, we've just gotten to meet each other today, and but spent some time talking over the phone and planning to do, a podcast episode together. And our partner, I guess, would Roddy's role be partner account manager?
That's correct.
So our partner account manager, Roddy, who does a fantastic job communicating with me, keeping me up to date on all the stuff going on with Dell Technologies, he connected us and he says, man, you got to have Neal come and do a talk with you because we got all this stuff going on. So I'm excited to have you today for this this podcast episode.
Thanks.
And so when I brought the podcast platform up to you guys, and we were kind of talking about different topics that we could cover. Really, the first thing that you all suggested was a ongoing story that Dell has been, I guess, publicizing or really staking into the ground over the last 6 months or so about business transformation. So that's really what we're going to cover today. And I would expect from a company like Dell to hear a lot about technology, but surprisingly enough, as we talked through, preparing for this episode, a lot of what we talked about was just business practices in general and the technology that underlays it. So knowing that this discussion is not just focused on technology, can you kind of give an explanation of just that overarching view of the transformation message that Dell is bringing into the market?
Sure. One of the things that we've been focused on since I've been at Dell, almost 16 years, we've always focused on the customer. We've always focused on the business value that we can bring either from a financial perspective or from helping with applications or helping with automation or whatever those business needs were to help businesses be more profitable and grow. So one of the main things that we finally put together this story about transformations, and there are several transformations that are included with all businesses, and it doesn't matter if you're a mom and pop donut shop or if you're GE. If we had anybody out there that went to Dell Technologies World this year, one of the things that we showed was a commercial that had run earlier this year where GE is using some of the Dell products for preventive maintenance, predictive maintenance on jet engines. And that theory can be applied to just about any business. So what it takes to make that happen, though, are several different transformations. To kind of set the table about what we're looking at is, if you look at the workforce is transforming. We had a conversation before we came in that many of your salespeople you're not really going to have salespeople in the office anymore, and they're going to be remote, which means they're going to be connecting remote. They're going to be using laptops, tablets, or whatever their tools are that they use out there. They're going to have different applications that need to stand on their own, and some of that data needs to move to the edge. Some of it needs to be stored, but it needs to be ultimately stored in the back end. So as the workforce changes, a number of other things have to change at the same time. And we look at it as 4 different transformations that need to occur. One of them is the digital transformation, which applies to the applications. Now, everything that you do with a business relies on an application. And so there's some applications out there that analyze data. There's some that are used for accounts receivable, accounts payable. There's all kinds of different things out there. Well, those applications are going to be changing pretty dramatically we see that they're going to be changing pretty dramatically over the next few years, and they're not going to be based in a data center anymore. This is a message that's been out there for a long time, where some people want to put everything in the cloud. That really doesn't work very well, and it's not very cost effective at times. So you want to have what we call a hybrid cloud, and nearly all of the vendors out there are now talking about hybrid cloud, being able to have an on-prem cloud and a public cloud where you can go back and forth between those two. That requires an application change, so the applications have to be modernized. And then what I just talked about, the users are transforming. The user transformation is happening where most people are working from home now, or they're working on the road. And obviously that goes hand in hand with the applications. Now, when you
even kind of like the, hybrid cloud, where you have applications that need to run in multiple places depending on the application, or similarly, now we have hybrid employees who are sometimes remote, sometimes in the office. I mean,
exactly.
It's just a trend across technology and
and
business.
That's the workforce transformation. So you've got the digital transformation in the application, and you've got the workforce transformation. And all of that relies on an IT transformation where your infrastructure can be able to move back and forth between the cloud, hopefully seamlessly. My opinion is I don't think we're quite there yet from the experiences that I've had with the customers I've dealt with. But we're getting there. And there's some new technologies that are just around the corner that you need to modernize your infrastructure for. When you modernize your infrastructure, you'll be able to take those applications from an on-prem cloud to an off-prem cloud and back and forth wherever you need them. And this comes into play for things like disaster recovery, backup, business continuance, and those kinds of things. So that's got to change too. And the fourth transformation that we see coming is security. What you have to look at is, now that the workforce is transforming and you've got people everywhere all the time, they want to be able to use any device, anytime, anywhere. And that means that your security has to change with it as well, because your attack surface has now just become huge. So you have to approach it from different angles. You have to approach it from the client angle, from your connectivity angle, from your data center angle. There's all kinds of different things. And Dell Technologies has different groups. We have different companies. Obviously, Dell Technologies is kind of the top level, and then you have our client group, which is mostly the we call Dell, and then Dell EMC, which is the data center, and then you have VirtuStream, which is a cloud storage, and you have several of our other, like RSA, everyone knows that's for two-factor authentication, and they have some other products as well. SecureWorks, where we provide security services to companies to monitor and manage their security programs, and then Pivotal, which also helps us, and then VMware also. But Pivotal is our agile application, and we can provide some services for that and the tools to be able to develop the new applications that are coming. And of course, like I said, VMware is out there as well.
Yeah, and that's probably the one everybody's talking about right now, because it's been the most recent news acquisition or merger or whatever. I don't know the official language of what, but essentially VMware is now part of Dell Technologies. Is that right?
That is correct. And so as we're doing this, as of yesterday, there was an announcement that Dell has been a private company for several years now, and then we acquired the EMC group, which held about 70%, I think it was 72% of VMware, or maybe it was 80%. But anyway, now, and there was a tracking stock that was included with that. And there's some financial things here that I'm not totally understand or privy to, but yesterday there was an announcement that we're going public again.
Yeah.
And I don't know all the details of that, but so now what's going to happen is we're going to become a public company.
That's exciting news for Dell Technologies, absolutely. And you had, when talked about the transformation story, and we were running through some of the modern business aspects of modern business, you had some pretty interesting statistics that you mentioned to me. Is that something you can pull up and kind of
Sure.
talk about real quick? I thought some of those were...
So, we'll start with the average human attention span. One of the things that we mention is the average human attention span is down to 8 seconds now.
That's not good news for this podcast.
No,
if
it's
they only
well.
listen to 8 seconds of us.
Hopefully, they listen to more than that. And of course, we talked about work whenever, wherever, and some of the studies are now showing that 60%. I think this is a low number, frankly, because when you work from home, one of the things that you have to deal with is, okay, when do I turn off?
Yeah.
Because you're not leaving the office. 60% work after normal hours. Another statistic that came out recently was 90% of all data produced. 90% of all data produced has happened in the last 2 years.
That's mind-boggling to me.
It is.
To think that,
where are we keeping it all?
Yeah, I'm sure it's multiple places. It's probably all over the place, and that's a problem of it in and of itself. Just data storage and data management.
Yes, it is, and so that's where EMC has been, and Dell EMC now is the #1 storage vendor. And in the recent quarter, we gained market share again. So we've turned that thing around, and so one quarter does not make a trend, but it's a start.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is that what we're seeing through RSA and from SecureWorks in particular is that every 12 to 15 months, we're seeing twice the number of security attacks in the business world that we had in the previous 12 months. So it's very, very important, and I think I don't think there's any manufacturer or of our competitors anyway that are not talking about security.
Yeah.
We've approached it from a couple of different ways, particularly on the servers. One of the threats that people don't think about is when you retire a server. At the end of its life cycle, how do you secure that server? Well, it used to be you had to run a program. I won't mention the most popular one that everybody's heard of recently in politics, but there are several applications out there that rewrite the drive. Well, we have what we call instant secure erase, where now in just a few minutes or even seconds, the drive becomes unreadable. But you can still reuse it, so you end up writing over those blocks. That's one of the things we've done. We've secured our BIOS and firmware. We now have a chain of custody from the time it's developed all the way through and then we also watch and check that when it needs to be updated.
And when you say the chain of custody for the firmware, you're essentially talking about. Are you talking about the component parts that make up a device or a server or something like that, being able to track all of that?
The answer is yes.
Yeah, okay.
So we track, one of the differentiators that we've always had is we have a service tag on every computer that we have. And we know where that service tag goes. Even if InfoSystems were to sell that to a customer, we know the end user customer that it's going to. So we know the parts that are in there. We can track, if we monitor all that. So if there's something that happens and we see a trend in a particular model or a particular part that's failing, we proactively reach out to our customers and say, if it came through InfoSystems, we'd reach out to you and say, hey, this customer we're seeing this problem with this customer, and these are the things that we need to do to fix that to make it more reliable. I think we used to be the only manufacturer that had that capability. And so when I talk about chain of custody for the firmware, when it's developed, we know who developed it, where it was developed, and we sign it.
Yeah.
And then when it goes out to manufacturing, it's signed, and then when it goes into a system, then we know that that's a valid system because it's checked out on our quality assurance. And then as it comes in, the other part of it is with the integrated Dell remote access or card or iDRAC, when we do an update, we not only keep N-1 on the card in non-volatile memory, but we also check that firmware to make sure that the chain of custody is in there. I'm waiting for us to come out with some kind of a blockchain that says, okay, This is, we know that it's there, or we know that exactly, in other words, it hasn't reached the next step unless everything else has been verified.
Yeah.
I see that as the next step, and this is me talking. I don't know anything about what's going on in engineering, but
Right.
I assume that the next step is, and because that's what makes it more secure, is the blockchain. So
Yeah, yeah. And blockchain is a whole concept that's really, I mean, I'm sure there are people out there that could really describe blockchain in detail and all of the various applications of it, but man, that's one of those topics that's just so big and nebulous right now. I can't even really get a handle on it.
and it can be pretty complicated.
Yeah.
I've done some reading on it, and I'm on one of our server councils internal to Dell, and it's come up with in our discussions a couple of times.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of innovation that we're looking at from a company perspective that we're not just looking at what the needs are today. We're looking at what the future looks like, and things like Generation Z for being able to have true composability across hardware. So you could use, for example, CPU cycles from several different physical boxes.
Mm-hmm.
And so 14th generation servers and our new our refresh on some of our products are going to include the capability to integrate that technology, where today's technology or the previous generations, yeah, you can get them to work, it looks like, but they're not really designed for that particular function. So as applications change and as applications become more agile and move around, containers is another big thing that's right around the corner.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard of that as
A
well.
lot of talk about containerization right now. Yeah.
And so containerization, the ultimate to containerization is being able to have a composable infrastructure at a component level.
Mm-hmm.
Memory, hard drives, compute. And being able to say, I need this much compute, and I don't care where I get it from.
Mm-hmm.
I could get it from server A or server 9, or server C or server D or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that can happen pretty quickly. So we want to be ready for that, and that's where Dell is getting our products ready. And we're helping you guys by doing things like this and
Yeah.
education.
Now, we are, and just as a primer, we are going to have some future episodes where we go in a little more detail on the actual technologies that you guys are bringing to the market, the server technologies, the storage technologies. But for now, talking about transformation, and you just mentioned an interesting point about the way you can support InfoSystems and the way we do business. I see transformation there in the fact that, you know, you're creating the technologies, like you mentioned, the proactive monitoring of the end user devices and being able to, you know, come to InfoSystems and say, hey, we've noticed a trend in the marketplace with something, and we can work with you to help go out there and solve it. You know, just in the way that I think that's something that gets overlooked from companies out in the market that work with IT companies like InfoSystems. You know, some companies prefer to do business with, you know, a freelance type IT person who, you know, maybe they have a long-term relationship with, and, you know, he's supported their needs and done a pretty good job. But a lot of business leaders don't realize the value that InfoSystems has with our technology partners, and being able to hand in hand go implement solutions and work through issues with our customers. We're not out there on our own. We've got support from, you know, smart people like you. So I mean, can you talk a little bit just about how you have worked with business partners, not just InfoSystems, but in general, to help us do a better job for our end customers?
Well, a lot of it comes down to, and I'm in the channel, so there's, and I was I was in the direct side of the business for a while as well. But in the channel, what we do is we try to enable you with training. I try to get here as often as I can to help you answer any questions. We're willing to go out with customers with you and support you in that manner, as well as, you know, any challenges you may have with support. We're here to help you with that. Dell support has generally been pretty good. I'm not going to say we're perfect. We're not. But when we mess up, we make it right.
Yeah.
And we've worked with you in particular on that recently with InfoSystems, with one of your large customers. So and that's part of my job, is to help out with those kinds of things, and connecting the right dots within Dell to get that to happen. And I think that's one of the benefits of working with Dell for you and your customers, because now they know that InfoSystems, is backed up by what are we now, an $80 billion company? And so we're there when you need us.
Yeah.
And so those are the things that we do to help you with your customers and moving forward. It's not just the technology, because we can keep you up on things that we've talked about today, but we're also there when you need us to help with support or help in a sales campaign or anything like that. So, and we're more than willing to go out and support you in front of the customers as well.
Yeah, it's a great partnership, and I know the people on our team value the resources we have with Dell. But just to wrap up the conversation on transformation, we talked about, you mentioned applications, clouds, infrastructure, users, and then security wrapping around all that. Where does transformation start? Is there a starting point? What's the method for really the audience we're talking to here are business leaders and professionals. Maybe they're IT, maybe they're not IT, around the region in Tennessee, and companies of all sizes. There may be small business people who are watching this. There could be people who work for really large companies watching. So what's the message? Where does that IT transformation start?
Well, from our perspective, it starts with modernizing the infrastructure. I know that kind of sounds like a sales thing, but the thing is that as things change, the older technology can't keep up. And so you need to have a modern infrastructure. That means that you have to look at what you have. That's not to say that you need to do a rip and replace. We don't ever encourage that. What the approach that I've used and the approach that we have taught most of the direct and the channel is that, let's leverage what you have until it's not useful anymore. So modernizing your infrastructure and starting with either the servers or the networking. Software-defined networking is coming on pretty strong all of a sudden over the last 6 months to a year, and it's moving. We saw it in the large organizations, and now it's moving down into smaller organizations because it works with, NSX with VMware was the big thing. So you've got that capability. So step one is to modernize the infrastructure. Look at ways that you can leverage the new technology in your current environment that's ready for what's coming. The next thing is to automate as much as you can. You want to automate not only your deployment, but also your ongoing management. Things like what we offer, Support Assist, for our servers, where the server by itself will say, I've got a drive that's in a pre-failure mode. I'm going to send an email or send a notice to Dell. Dell will open up a case in our support organization, and then someone will either call or tell you or send you an email and say, depending on what information you've put in there into the system, and say, look, we're going to ship you a drive. Where do you want it shipped, and who will receive it, and do you want a technician to come out and change it for you? So those kinds of things that we used to have purely in the storage realm have now moved into the servers, and it won't be long and we'll have it in other parts of the infrastructure as well. So automating isn't just deployment. It's also ongoing management. It's also lifecycle management. How, keeping track of when things come out of warranty, for example. With our Open Managed Enterprise system, now we can, which used to be Open Managed Essentials, which some of the customers may know about, we can give you warnings that, hey, this particular server or this particular device has a warranty that runs out in 6 months or a year. And you can set those flags to say, hey, or you can you can download an Excel spreadsheet, however you want to look at it. You can keep track of your assets. And then finally, the transformation follows on to that. Of course, we're already in the middle of that now with the workforce transformation and kind of a digital transformation that's going on, the IT transformation. So if you modernize, then automate, then you'll be able to transform, and your people will be able to spend time on the transformation rather than deployment instead of putting the pieces and parts together.
Yeah.
One of the things that we offer in that area is we offer a spectrum from build to buy. You can build it from parts and pieces. We have reference architectures. We have ready configurations. We have appliances, or you can buy the whole rack all at one time. And we can go into that at a different time, but that kind of gives you an idea of our approach to providing support not only for InfoSystems, but also your customers.
Yeah, that's great. And, you know, I mean, one of the topics that keeps coming up on the various podcasts we produce, you know, we talk about business transformation, and InfoSystems has always been a business first consulting company. We're not out there.
Yes.
We didn't grow to this size over the course of 25 years by going out and trying to sell servers or, you know, sell storage networks or anything like that. You know, the customers that we've earned trust with over that period of time have continued to do business with us because we really talk and get in deep and consult them on, you know, whatever their business strategy or, you know, projections or growth plan or whatever they're going through at the moment. You're going to have IT to support it, and they need to know, you know, what are the capabilities, what can or can't we do. I mean, they really need that trusted advisor, and that's where InfoSystems has been for 25 years now, is serving in that advisor role. And yes, we end up selling infrastructure or whatever it may be. You know, that's part of the business. But that's, you know, it's not really, it's interesting that, you know, to me, especially with, you know, Dell Technologies as one of our partners, that's such a, you know, it's a connected approach there. Because,
well, there's a synergy there that our approach allows us to work together on many of these things and provide, instead of the approach of, hey, I got to have so many of these widgets going out the door, you know, what are those widgets going to do? What kind of value do you have? There's a whole series of questions that go along with that. If you're going to, for example, if you expand your storage, well, you know, what about backup? What about disaster recovery? What about business continuance? How's your system growing? What are your business needs in those areas? Are you in a zone where there's tornadoes or hurricanes or anything like that? I don't know if you have any business that far south, but those are the things that we need to consider when we go in and talk to a business. And then also, what I like to talk about is what are the business goals for this year? What are the business goals for next year? And kind of taking the crystal ball and looking at what's going to happen. What are you going to need in a year? And, you know, sounds like you guys are doing a really good job of that, and we're here to help that.
Yeah, and I mean, IT is so incredibly complex now, and there's so many areas of specialization. And I mean, like you said, one change or one decision with IT may have a whole river of downstream effects that also have to be planned for. I can't imagine, you know, a company, a small business out there who may only have a few IT resources within their company trying to approach all of that by themselves. So, you know, I think we're both in a good spot in that we provide a lot of value to, you know, business people who are out in the market today.
And I know on the direct side, a lot of times you guys as partners can be much more nimble than we can as far as reaching out to the customers and staying with them through the whole process and providing those services that are absolutely required, not only from a consulting perspective, but also from an implementation perspective.
Yep.
So, you know, Dell can do that, but, you know, for some of the situations, it's far better to have a local team to be able to represent Dell and to represent and help get things solved and make sure that they're considering everything they need to consider.
That's great. I think that's a great place to close this conversation.
Awesome.
I've really enjoyed, what we talked about today and the direction it went. And I thought we, had a lot of good stuff came out of this. And I do look forward also to the next couple of episodes we'll record where we get to dig in a little more on the technology side of it.
Great.
But thanks, Neal.
Thank you. We really appreciate it.